Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi?
Jehu, that's me. Who calls?
The commission by Yahweh to Elijah the prophet that the house of Ahab and Jezebel will be destroyed by Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, and Elisha, the son of Shaphat.
Destroy the house of Ahab and Jezebel? Alrighty, I'm in. When do we start?
You are anointed
Ah!
king over Israel. You will smite the house of Ahab, for God will be avenged of the blood of his servants, the prophets, at the hand of Jezebel. The dogs shall eat Jezebel, she shall not be buried.
So that was me, many years ago, Jehu, a captain of the host, sitting among the other captains of the army of Israel when a prophet anoints me king, then runs out the door. Many years later, I have reigned close to 28 years now. It was a whirlwind, if you know what I mean. Well, after I was anointed, I had to get me a chariot, a sleek, fast set of wheels and good, healthy horses that could carry me through the land at a good clip-clop. Yeah, she really goes, this chariot. It's done me well. Anyway, I had a job to do as the new king of Israel. Ahab had only just been killed by Ahaziel, king of Syria, not too long before I was anointed, and now his son reigned. But really, Jezebel reigned, and I knew where that would end. Well, me and Elijah and Elisha and the prophet who anointed me knew as well. But I had work to do. The house of Ahab and Jezebel was large. He had many sons, and the successor to Ahab was Joram, who'd fought against his father's adversary in Ahaziel, king of Syria, and had done quite well. But he was injured and was resting, trying to get better, so there was not a moment to lose. I was able to find him in his chariot in a field by the wall of the palace. It used to be called the portion of Naboth the Jezreelite. But he had been killed by Jezebel, and the land that he owned had been taken by Ahab. Anyway, he realized that I'd come to destroy the house of Ahab by the commission of the prophet Elijah, and he tried to flee. But I took my trusty bow and the straightest arrow I could find, and I pulled it back as hard as I could. The arrow flew straight and struck him down. You would not believe it, but the horses and the chariot that he was in did not move. They stayed still, right in the field of Naboth. And Joram sank down and died in his chariot there in the field of Naboth the Jezreelite. So you can see that the God of Israel was with me. Everything he said, I made it happen. No matter where they went, I followed faster. No matter how many of them, I found them and killed them all. The people of the land even saw that I was the avenger of that wicked Jezebel and her evil household, and that my hand was strong against them. I drove my trusty chariot all over the land looking for those who were related to the king, and I drove so fast that the dust from my chariot was still in the air when I returned on the same road later. Well, that might have been a bit of an exaggeration, but I tell you, I drove fiercely. It matched my zeal that I had for Yahweh in executing his judgment on the house of wicked Jezebel, and people knew it was me coming to deliver that house of wickedness to its inevitable doom at my hand. Nothing could stand in my way. Jezebel tried. Oh, yes, she tried vainly to appease me and trick me with her evil, wicked ways. She even tried to paint up her face to make herself look beautiful, as if it would trick me. Ha! No, I would have nothing to do with that evil woman. I commanded that she be thrown down from the window of the tower to her death. And even her most trusted servants knew that not even Jezebel could stand in the way of Jehu the Avenger. Well, all that work made me hungry, so I went and ate. You wouldn't believe it. But it was told me while I was just tucking into some dumpling and custard that Jezebel's body had been eaten by dogs, and that not only her hands and her feet, but also her skull were the only things that were left. They weren't consumed. So what was left was then thrown into the field of the portion of Jezreel, exactly as Elijah had been told it would happen to her. Well, that wasn't the end. I had the rest of the family as well to find and destroy. So I rushed off again and found Ahab's children and made sure that there was not one left alive. I even heard of people traveling up from Judah to visit the family of Ahab. So I destroyed them as well. And then finally I had the house of Baal to wipe out of Israel. And yep, we did it. All in one hit. They thought I was going to follow Baal, that I would be the next leader of Israel that would bow down to that fake god. No way. We had our own God. We worshipped in Bethel and Dan, spiritual worship of the golden calves that date back to the time of Aaron, the great high priest, the brother of Moses. Yes, he made one too. We had these wonderful symbols to worship, and for the remainder of my days, I served them, because they stand as a symbol of salvation to my people, just like I, Jehu, the avenger of God, am a symbol of saving my people from the house of wicked Ahab and Jezebel. Well, that was Jehu, always on a mad dash. But sadly, he never understood what having zeal for God really meant. God was looking for people to understand his ways and worship him in actions of sincerity and in truth, not being caught up in false ways of living where people pretend to worship God, but really they're just worshipping themselves. Jehu only fooled himself by thinking that he could become one of the most powerful tools of vengeance of God, but he never saw that God was not only unhappy with Baal worship, but also idol worship as well, just as the golden calves of Dan and Bethel were. It didn't help Jehu to have them, nor sadly would it help his people to turn back to God. But Psalm 69 says that the Lord Jesus Christ would be consumed with a zeal for the house of God. We have a wonderful example of how to show true zeal to God by seeing how Christ was willing to die to ensure that people came to know God in truthful ways and also would be saved. Jehu was not a good example of how to act in zeal for God. But Jesus tells us that those who do the will of my Father in heaven are those that he considers to be true brethren and sisters. They're those who try to show zeal to God by displaying his characteristics, his ways of goodness, of sincerity, and of truth as they live them in their lives.